everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I am going to recap the live stream where we dyed some Cheviot Roving and a bunch of yarn with some Sharpie highlighters. This braided roving has just about cooled. We learned in our live stream that the yellow highlighters are sensitive to pH, and so when you added the extracted yellow fluorescent color to some vinegar water, the yellow disappeared and we're left with only a hint of that bright neon yellow. We also learned that the pink highlighter strikes the fiber a lot faster, and this roving still in the pan shows this really clearly, where we have where we can see that the orange spread a lot further than the pink. But now we're going to go and start washing the fiber so we can see just how much color stuck behind. And then at the end of this recap, I will show you the finished dry yarn. Here is some 100% superwash merino yarn that I dyed with the pink and orange highlighters and then used the ink tube from the blue to dab it for some speckles. We're going to add it to some rinse water for the very first time. The yarn was originally pre-soaked in vinegar, and then I steamed it for 30 minutes in a dedicated dye pot. And at first look, all of this color is in the yarn. The highlighter color was extracted from the highlighters themselves with a combination of rubbing alcohol and warm water. And I was following a tutorial designed by Paradise Fibers, and they gave it to me in the September Fiber of the Month Club subscription box. I was super excited and knew that I wanted to try this dyeing tutorial right away. I am a Paradise Fibers affiliate, and if you would like to learn more about the subscription, you can see a link in the video description. But now I'm going to add just a little bit of clear dish soap to see if we start to rinse out any color, or if the color, these vibrant orange and pinks, oh yeah, those are in the yarn, and the blue too. The blue was not part of the kit, but when I knew I was going to try to do this live stream, I wanted to buy a few extra highlighters so that way I could have enough on hand to do a few experiments, and in case it took a while to extract the color, then we would have plenty. But I found that the best way to extract the color, and the fastest way, is to take a squeeze bottle and squeeze some rubbing alcohol through the tube, and that gives you dye quickly. But anyway, I'm going to hang this one up to dry and go to the next yarn. I dyed some miniskeins in the live stream, and in some of them you can see a hint of some of the yellow left behind. This one is the 100% Peruvian Highland wool. This is the 100% superwash merino. You can see a hint of the yellow. And then here is our sock yarn. That is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. In contrast, here's some 100% cotton. There's still a little bit of the pink and orange, but the blues and the yellow completely rinsed out. The 100% polyester has no trace of color anymore, and the 100% acrylic has just a slight pink stain. But I wanted to finish washing all of these miniskeins to see if anything else would come out, because I didn't add any soap yet. I did a healthy handful of the dish soap. And I'm sort of pulling these all together as I am washing. But I'm curious if color will come out of the cotton and acrylic but that's something that we will take a closer look at when the yarn is dry. There might be a little staining, but nothing anywhere near what we see with the wool. In our live stream, we discovered that the highlighter yellow is pH sensitive, and when we added it to the vinegar, it basically disappeared. Here is our bright highlighter yellow color on a paper towel. And here is some of the water with vinegar, with a splash of vinegar that I use, the exact same water I use for the pre-soak on the yarn. And when I dip it in, the yellow disappears. If I dip the whole thing in and leave it for a minute, you can't really see any of the yellow at all. So this is why I was not able to get the bright yellow color on the yarn. With no acid, I added some of the yellow and blue highlighter ink onto some dry 100% Peruvian Highland wool yarn. I then steamed it for 30 minutes, and once I turned off the steamer basket, let it hang out in there for a little bit. So now is the moment of truth. Did any of this color stay in the yarn, or is it all going to wash out? And you can see a hint of yellow on the bottom of that steamer basket. But let's see. I see color coming out. See a lot of color coming out. That is a beautiful green. I have no idea if everything will rinse out or if anything will be left behind. I knew that I could have potentially dipped the yarn into some acid, but I was afraid if I did that, if the color would just disappear. And there's still some more rinsing out, but it does look like we have some color in the yarn itself. What I don't know is that at this stage, if we were to add acid, if the rest of the color would just disappear. It does look like some of the blue stuck around, but before we do a little acid test, let's just add some soap. And alright, it looks like we've got some color that is staying in our yarn. Let me rinse out the soap, and then we can do a little acid test. So the good news is that you can get the yellow to strike with no acid, and some of the blues as well. Let's add a splash of white vinegar and see if those yellows stick around. It's a big splash. I cannot tell yet if that made the yellow disappear. And I think that vinegar, even after steaming it for so long, we got the color to bind, but check it out. That yellow has like rinsed out. The blue is stuck around though. So anyway, I'm gonna go rinse this. We could have gotten the yellow to stay, but if all it takes is a little bit of acid to make the color go away, then it's not really that permanent. So I am going to rinse this and hang it up to dry, and then we'll wash our roving. I just picked up my roving braid, and it's fun to see that the underside and the top side of the pink and orange sections are pretty similar. Granted, maybe there's a little more orange on the top, but I think that that'll give a really nice variegated effect. There's a little bit of bleeding, but I want to be very, very careful and not rub. I'm squeezing a bit, which is a tad bit risky, but I'm trying to not have any running water over the fiber, and add a tiny bit of the dish soap. The color in the dye bag was not 100% clear, but it was somewhat much clearer. There's a lot of color in here, and thankfully with the yarn we know that it did not take a million rinses to get the bleeding to stop. but I just want to wash it very, very gently. And all right, there's some pinks that are bleeding. That orange is pretty good though. And who knows if some of that yellow is going to come out. There's like a hint of a butter yellow from the fluorescent yellow markers, but just the barest hint. If they're still bleeding after a couple washes, I'm not going to worry about getting it 100% clear here. I'm going to worry about getting it 100% clear after I have spun my yarn, because I really don't want to felt anything. But yeah, that's already, oh, I don't want to be under the running water. But I think because the pinks, like overall, there's the same amount of dye, I think, of the pink and the orange. But there's a much, 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 much bigger surface area for the orange, which is why we're seeing some of the pink bleeding. Yeah, and that is really light now. I think I'm going to do one more rinse. And then, I mean, I'm not getting any pink on my hands. I think I'm going to do one more rinse and then hang it up to dry, but I want to be careful because you can see that each time I squeeze it, that I lift some of these fibers on the edge, and I really don't want to felt it. But I like having the roving sort of organized in these braids because it keeps it a little safer. But yeah, actually that's pretty good. Let's see what happens when I remove it. All right, that's basically no bleeding. I'm gonna let it soak for a tiny bit. Then squeeze out as much of the water as I can with a towel and hang this up to dry. Here is the finished dried fiber from our live stream. When we dyed this yarn with highlighters, we got some really, really bright orange, pink, and blue. The yellow, when it hit acid, lost a lot of the brightness. But as the yarn dried, some of this yellow tone came back. When I was washing this 100% wool yarn, I added a splash of acid and we saw that yellow disappear. But it didn't really disappear. The molecules didn't unbind. It's just the pH seems to affect the depth of the bright yellow that we see. And then in the roving, you do see some of the highlighter yellow, this pale butter yellow in there. And it is distinct from some of the whites left behind. It's just not as bright when you compare it to the orange or the pink. And then finally, the blues are also really bright. And man, this was color fast. We did not see this color rinse out. And I think these yarns are really awesome. And we dyed them with highlighters. The yellow color bounced back in the miniskeins as well when drying. You can see some hints of the yellow in the 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 100% wool, and 100% superwash merino. You can see all four colors here. The colors spread more on the 100% wool, and we have sharper specks on the superwash based yarns. This is consistent with a lot of other materials we've used to dye yarn. The 100% acrylic and the 100% cotton have a little bit of a pink stain left, but all of the other colors did appear to rinse out. And in the polyester, it doesn't seem like anything, maybe the barest hint of a blush stain, but otherwise everything else rinsed out. These highlighters are fluorescent. So let's go take a look at all of this yarn that we dyed with the Sharpie highlighters under a black light and see what we can see. Now let's turn on the black light and check it out. We see some fluorescent patches where the yellow highlighter went. Over here is that wool yarn. And what looked like the yellow disappeared, it's bright. Same with the yellow on the roving and these yellow patches on the wool yarn. I don't really see any of the yellow on these brighter white yarns, or it's the cotton, the acrylic, and the polyester. So I really think that the yellow highlighter did wash out of that. But you can definitely see it on the roving, the patches on the wool yarn, and this 100% wool yarn where we added the most of the yellow highlighter. I opened up the skein that was the pink, orange with blue speckles, and it shows something interesting. You see these patches right here? Some of the fluorescent yellow remained. When we tried to start painting with it, we saw the yellow, the bright yellow disappear and thought, oh, that's all gone. So then we covered it up with the orange and pink. But it is fun that you can find it again under the black light. And I think it's a little hard to show up on camera, but I promise that I see that highlighter yellow there. Finally, let's unbraid our roving and see what kind of pattern we got. Ooh. I like dyeing yarn in a braid, in part because of the pattern and color that you can get, but also because it does help keep the fiber safe while watching, and so you have a little less risk of agitation. But as we unwind this, you can see that we've got the orange throughout, and half of it has these pink splotches and the other half has yellow. You could spin this just starting at one end, working to the other, and end up with some sort of gradient type yarn, or you could section it into pieces and get almost maybe something that's a little self-striping from having the pink patches versus the paler and fluorescent yellow patches. No matter how you choose to spin this, I think that this Cheviot Roving is going to turn into something fantastic. We learned so much over the course of this live stream, and now I need to do a lot of thank yous. First of all, a massive thank you to Paradise Fibers for not only sending me your Fiber of the Month Club to unbox and share with everyone, but also coming up with this delightful tutorial of how to dye wool with Sharpie highlighters. The innovation and inspiration and care that goes into your Fiber of the Month care packages is absolutely extraordinary, and I highly recommend it, and not just because I am an affiliate, but because I truly think that it is an absolute pleasure and delight to open up every month. If you would like to learn more, you can find a link to the Fiber of the Month Club in the video description. I also need to give a massive thank you to all of you, ChemKnits Lab, ChemKnits Tutorials viewers. Some of you were dyeing alongside of me, and in this live stream I would ask a question and say, I wonder if you had a green highlighter and added acid, would blue be left behind, or is the green, is the green a mixture, or is it its own molecule? And during the live stream, some of you found highlighters and tested it out. And yeah, it turns out that when you add acid to the green highlighter, you see blue. At the same time, some others of you in the ChemKnits Lab Facebook group were doing some tests on paper towels and dipping the yellow highlighter marks into acid and then base and watching them reappear and disappear depending on the pH. I think that all of this is absolutely fascinating and all the more fun to play with, and I am so thankful to have all of you as part of the greater ChemKnits community. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you enjoy these out-of-the-box tutorials and live streams and chats, subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. This project came to me from an outside source, but I love this whole think outside the box, use unconventional materials to dye yarn. And there's a number of videos in a similar vein in the Dye Pot Weekly series on my channel. So you should really check it out. If you are already a fan of ChemKnits and want to support us on a more personal level, check out the ChemKnits Patreon, where you can get perks like early access to a new dyeing video each month, behind the scenes sneak peeks, and more. And once again, a huge thank you for tuning in for this entire journey. I know this was a longer recap than normal, but I wanted to show some of the washing because I wanted to see just how color fast this highlighter would be on the wool yarn. I have a feeling there is a spinning live stream in my future. It's been a while since I've done a little spin along video, and so maybe we've got a great candidate right here. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.